Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We'll give everybody just a second here to join, and then we will get started. Welcome, everyone. We will get started here in just a moment. All right, while we have some additional folks joining us, I just wanted to say good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the October 2023 PQA Quality Forum Webinar. I'm Amanda Ryan, Director of Education here at the Pharmacy Quality Alliance, and our topic today is diverse voices in quality. This webinar is sponsored by PerformRx. We thank PerformRx for sponsoring the webinar today, which is during American Pharmacist Month. And this is a time when we recognize pharmacists' contributions to healthcare and all that they can do for their communities. PQA is grateful to PerformRx for their support today and throughout the year. If you would like to find out more about PerformRx, you can visit performrx.com. Before we get started, I'd like to walk you through our usual housekeeping items here. First and foremost, as always, please submit your questions to us. During the webinar, you can use the Q&A feature that you see at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You will notice that today's webinar format is quite a bit different from our typical Quality Forum webinars. We won't be using slides for the majority of the presentation today. Instead, we are going to have an in-depth panel discussion, so we encourage you to interact with us by submitting your questions throughout the webinar, and we will incorporate them as we go through the webinar, and then we will answer some questions at the end if there are some additional questions and we have time remaining. Also, the webinar recording and the slide deck will be available to PQA members within the week following today's webinar, and you'll be able to find that in the Member Resources Library section of PQA's website. And then the recording is also going to be publicly posted on PQA's YouTube channel. And then finally, I would like to encourage you, as always, to please complete the 1-minute survey that will populate as you exit the webinar today. We do use your feedback to help shape our future programming. Before I introduce today's speakers, I would like to share some brief background information with you about PQA's Diverse Quality Leaders program. To begin, PQA believes that diverse leaders and teams make decisions that are more responsive to not only the needs, but also the perspectives and the interests of diverse populations. And the PQA Diverse Quality Leaders program is part of a larger commitment to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to improve health equity. As we work to address disparities that affect medication use quality and patient outcomes, we believe that a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce will strengthen PQA's efforts. The conversation you will hear today aligns with these goals. PQA's Diverse Quality Leaders program contains multiple components, and I'll go through them here briefly with you now. There are 2 diversity and quality scholarships, the first of which was implemented this year, and it was to support minority healthcare professional student attendance at both the PQA annual meeting as well as the medication use quality live workshop that preceded the annual meeting. The second diversity and quality scholarship will support minority healthcare professionals and students who would like to take the medication use quality online continuing education and certificate program, which we just completed in August. So be on the lookout for information about that. The third component to come is expanded PQA leadership for summit participation opportunities. And then the fourth component is a quality shadowing program, which was also implemented this year and so far has included 14 participants who are invited to observe PQA's nomination-based panels. And then finally, why we're here today is the fifth component of the program, which is diverse voices in quality. And this is intended to showcase the successful career paths and experiences of medication use quality professionals from diverse groups at PQA member organizations. Today's webinar conversation is part of the Diverse Voices in Quality education series. And to get that conversation started, it is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's panelists. First, we have with us Michelle Johansson, who is Vice President and Chief of Staff of Medicare Part D at Prime Therapeutics. And then also with us is Banal Patel, who is Director of Clinical Initiatives at PerformRx. And then finally with us is Norris Turner, who is President and CEO of Turner Healthcare Quality Consulting. And with that, we will ask Norris, Banal, and Michelle to join us. Welcome. Hi, Michelle. Welcome, Banal.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Norris.
Hello.
Thanks so much for being part of the conversation today. We'll kick it off here with a little bit of background so our audience can understand each of you a little bit better. So we're going to open the discussion by having each of you tell us about yourselves, a little bit about how you became involved in medication use quality as well as PQA, and then how being from a diverse background has influenced your career. So Michelle, if you wouldn't mind getting us started, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So thank you so much for having us. Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Johansson again with Prime Therapeutics, Magellan RX. And I got into the world of quality actually through the world of compliance. I was a compliance officer by training and actually compliance officer at PerformRx. And during a CMS conference, really wanted to understand where the star ratings were coming from. And I remember Jonathan Blum said PQA. I wrote PQA down, came back, wrote a manifesto about how we needed to join PQA, get engaged with star ratings at a development level, and have never looked back. So I've been with PQA in some capacity for over 10 years, and it has just been such a great benefit. I've also had a chance to work on different PQA committees, including one led by Norris, and I'm currently on the Health Equity Technical Expert Panel. I've also helped to do your accredited CQA accreditation. So quality is everything. And if you're wondering the difference between quality and compliance, think about it like the difference between baking and barbecue. So you have to be very accurate and exact, and that's kind of like the compliance rules. But the nice thing about quality is that you can use data within some parameters, but you get a chance to make it your own. So appreciate being here. In terms of my own background, I think that the different conditions and illnesses that my family have had have certainly influenced my desire to be in healthcare. My dad was the first person I ever signed up for Medicare Part D. He had congestive heart failure. And so a lot of what I do is really trying to make sure that individuals that that are like members of my own family would be able to have the best healthcare possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I love the PQA manifesto. That's pretty cool. And I also really appreciate the analogy with compliance and quality and baking and barbecue. So yeah, baking requiring that additional precision. So thanks for illustrating that for us. Banal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So again, as Amanda said, my name is Banal Patel, and I am a pharmacist right now with PerformRx. So I guess my career journey is kind of very typical of most pharmacists, I would say. But I had my interest in pharmacy began even before I'd contemplated a career path. As a teenager, I had worked at an independent pharmacy that had really just kind of opened my eyes to what pharmacists can do within a community setting. During pharmacy school, I had decided that I wanted to pursue hospital pharmacy, and that's kind of what I did upon graduation. For many years, I worked in hospital pharmacy and really developed my clinical skill set, which I think has taken me places. And then, life happens, and when life happened to me, I joined PerformRx as a temporary MTM pharmacist over 10 years ago. It was supposed to be a 2-3 month stint, and here I am 10 years later. And that really changed the trajectory of my career. From a temp pharmacist, I worked my way up to director of that MTM team. And then earlier this year, I transitioned to my new role, called clinical initiatives. But it's basically trying to build out new clinical innovative programs with the ultimate goal of serving our membership. So that's kind of where I am right now. I would say that as a pharmacist, providing quality care has been a part of everything I do, from improving health outcomes, empowering the patients that I speak to, and making that part of everything that I do, and kind of what my focus is right now as well. My introduction to PQA happened when I joined PerformRx. I was asked to sit on a PQA, can't remember what we used to call them, not a measure update panel. It was a panel. It was a work group, I should say. And I joined the call and I was like, wow, what is this? And it kind of really opened my eyes that, I may be a clinician, I may be practicing, and I want to practice, clinically accurately, I would say. But when it came to measures and how it's assessed, it was a breath of fresh air. And that's kind of where my interest began in quality and measures and what else can pharmacists do. So since then, I've really tried to engage myself with PQA and have been part of work groups and whatnot, attended the conferences, presented, because I think you'll learn a lot from each other. Right now, I do participate in the measure update panel, which I think is fantastic. You learn a lot every day on a different basis and just takes you through the cycle of measure development. With regards to, how I got here, again, like I said, my path is it's been up and down and what I've done. But I think both my personal experiences and professional experience in what I've done have really influenced my career choice and kind of landed me on a path that I am now. Was it planned? Absolutely not. Had you asked me 10 years ago, I said I would still be in hospital pharmacy, but here I am. So there we go. Thank you for that.
It's really cool to hear all the unique ways that people become involved in quality in their career paths, and you're definitely an example of that. So thank you, Banal. Appreciate that. Norris, would you like to go next?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Amanda. So great. Again, a tremendous pleasure to be here and to join Michelle and Banal in this discussion with you. And I was thinking the exact same thing, like, wow, all the different, very diverse and super interesting ways people find their ways to quality and PQA. And I feel like mine is no different. Background wise, I'm a pharmacist by training. And also just kind of, if I were to characterize my journey and my kind of portfolio of experience, I would call it eclectic, which I think you'll kind of hear here. So, I have a pharmacy background, pharmacist. I immediately after completing pharmacy school did a PhD in pharmaceutical chemistry. So I was headed to the science side, right? I was a laboratory scientist. I did a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in kind of molecular biology. But it was at that time that I decided to step further away from the lab to do something that was very team oriented, was interdisciplinary, and I could see for what was like really kind of connected with me, tangible results of the work that I was a part of with many other people. And so I was fortunate to find my way to clinical trials. So I did clinical trials in the industry over about 15 years. I was at Pfizer for a couple of years, Purdue Pharma. And what I'll kind of say a little bit more about is my time at J&J, because it was my time at Johnson & Johnson where that shift and that kind of evolution to quality happened. I had been for the first 8 of my 12 years there. I was in the medical affairs side, doing trials and various other roles clinically. In the latter part of those 8 years, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was moving through Congress. I was curious. I was like, this is partly why I'm a scientist, because I'm so curious, right? But it also led me to quality. I was like, wow, that law passes, how are companies like J&J going to need to evolve? So I was also fortunate that this 2-year health policy program evolved at that time. I raised my hand, did that. And then I was fortunate that a market access group, in the market access group, a healthcare quality team formed. And I was one of the initial founding members of that team. So that's what first put PQA on my radar screen, because we entered quality. The thing that really inspired me to quality and this evolution from clinical trials, or really traditional clinical trialists, to quality was one of the last trials I was involved in that was in patients with schizophrenia that also had criminal justice involvement. At first, I was thinking about that study very, very scientifically, but then I started understanding this intersection between policy, practice, research, as well as social issues. And the combination of that with that health policy program and that job opened up in quality, propelled me into the quality world and introduced me to PQA while I was still at Johnson & Johnson. In terms of, the PQA story, right, I got introduced to PQA while I was at Johnson & Johnson, and then I left J&J a few years ago, and then worked at PQA for 2 years as vice president of measure implementation and strategic alliances. Like Michelle mentioned, I got to know her there. And so really got entrenched in all the work of PQA and loved it, especially as far as the external implementation of our measures. And then after about 2 years at PQA, I decided to start my own business. And that's what I currently do. I'm president and CEO of Turner Healthcare Quality Consulting. And to say it very simply, that involves what I was doing at J&J, because when I was at J&J, I realized, because I was meeting all the people who were doing the same job at other big pharma companies, I realized there's a much bigger industry out there. And I think a lot of these companies, smaller, medium-sized companies, don't have this competency. So I decided to hang my shingle. I have a small team now and been doing this for the last 4 years. As far as the diverse background, yeah, like Michelle and Banal mentioned, my personal, I'm from Detroit, in my family and in our community, I saw healthcare disparities play out. I had a major segment of my family where behavioral health was a challenge. And I had a number of different healthcare providers in my family. So that inspired me. And so when I saw things like that criminal justice study, it touched me personally and felt like I want to be a part of solutions for the communities I'm from.
Thank you, Norris. I love how you tied all that together at the end. Let's go on to another topic now. And this question here is for Banal. And then, of course, Norris and Michelle, you're welcome to chime in as well. Banal, so in our audience, we've got people who have been working in quality for a long time, some who maybe recently got involved, and others who are maybe curious about it and would like to know how they could become more involved. So what advice do you have for those who either want to become involved or grow their involvement in quality through their careers?
I think I'll first address this with the lens of a pharmacist, which is how I got involved and how I approach it. But I think what I will say is that whatever I say next is really applicable to any individual. It really depends on the fact that you want to do something. So you gotta go and do it. So as a pharmacist, I'll say that quality is not something new. Like I said earlier, quality is part of everything that we do, right? But what was new to me was getting involved, and I call it an official capacity in an organization, right? Such as PQA, or getting involved with associates within my organization who only focused on quality. So learning the nuances there. How does the team operate? What are they looking at? What are the different quality organizations out there that I need to look at? So when I started, as I said, PQA was the first one. So I learned a lot about PQA. Then hand in hand, I learned a lot about URAC too. As part of the team that I was working on, we were a URAC accredited organization. So what did that mean? What did that mean for my role? So again, taking bits and pieces and learning the full picture. Once you have that, I think you just build on it. You embed yourselves with teams. You go for opportunities. Don't hold back. You're never going to know everything. I still don't know everything about quality, but you're going to learn. You're going to learn by yourself, and you're going to learn from the people around you, right? So you got to be inquisitive. You got to want it. And I think the most important thing is, in my mind, quality, the work we do in quality has a massive impact on healthcare, on the health of the members we serve, or the healthcare of our population that's we're charged with taking care of. So you really have to have a passion for improving healthcare. And if you do, then I think you just stand up and say, I want to be a part of it, and find your way in. What I'll also say from a non-pharmacist perspective is that everyone that works in healthcare brings a different perspective to healthcare, right? Brings a different perspective to quality. So what Michelle brings to quality, what Norris brings to quality, and what I bring to quality are vastly different. We have the end goal is the same, but we bring different things. So there really is no one size fits all. So I think that each individual person's background and experience only adds to our collective impact on quality. So, you may think, oh, I don't know anything about quality. How am I going to get engaged and do it? Guess what? You are going to bring something to it. And that's kind of, when we look across our teams, that focus on quality, you'll see a wide array of individuals who really want to go in and do what they can to improve the health of our populations. So that's kind of my 2 cents on, how you can get in and make a difference.
Very inspiring. Thank you, Manal. Norris or Michelle, anything to add here? If not, we've actually got our first question from the audience, which goes right along with what Banal was just saying. So I think we've got a good wavelength going on here. The question was actually addressed to Michelle. So Michelle, I'll toss this to you. But Banal and Norris, please feel free to jump in as well. So the question is about how pharmacy technicians can become involved. So this person says not only within your company, but how do people at other pharmacy benefits managers engage with PQA, or I would just say in quality in general, we could broaden it to that. This is the first time this person's being exposed to PQA. So perhaps all of you have had conversations for people that are new to PQA. Is this something as tech can participate in? I'm going to spoiler alert and say yes, but Michelle, go for it. What do you think there?
Yeah, so I love that question. Happy belated Pharmacy Week, and that includes the technicians and pharmacists. I'm, by the way, I'm a licensed hypochondriac, so I'm not a clinician at all. There is a seat at the table in quality for everyone, for technicians especially, because technicians dominate a lot of the front line of PBM work, whether you're talking about utilization management, handling call centers. Millions of beneficiaries are actually engaging with technicians first. And so you have a lot of, you can bring to the table, what is the voice of the beneficiary? What are the things that you hear, whether it's on the phone? What are the things that you see if you're working in a grievance capacity? What are the things that you're seeing from a prior auth perspective? Because sometimes the farther away that you get from the beneficiary, sometimes we use the word patient, the farther away, like there's a huge piece that's missing, and you all can, as technicians, for those that are there, can help to bridge that gap in terms of bringing that voice to different things. And it doesn't matter what your role is, but become a student of whatever you're interested in. If you like something that someone's doing, regardless of their role, send them a chat, send them an IM, send them an email, and just tell them that, hey, you admire what that person's doing and you'd like to learn more. You'd be surprised how much time that'll get you. If there's conferences that are related to something that you're interested in, talk to your employer, your manager about whether or not you can go to those conferences. And then any conference that you attend, go to all the sessions, especially the happy hours, and mingle, or the professional term is network, right? But get to know people, because you'd be surprised who you run into. And if you tell them, I'm interested in learning more about quality, I'm interested in being able to help shape things, just by saying that you have an interest, you'll be surprised at what type of inroads that you make. And then last but certainly not least, yes, you have a voice at PQA. And PQA has a great team that's there to support member organizations, and any person that's a part of the member organization can especially get in contact with their team that's there to help new members to become acquainted. There's lots of knowledge and education on the PQA site, and the sky is the limit.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate that. So yes, there are multiple ways to get involved in PQA. So you are always welcome to reach out to us, and we're happy to talk with you more about those opportunities. All right, now our next topic is related to role models. So all of you have shared your story with us, and I know that role models and mentors, just like with all of us, that they've played roles in your stories as well. So Norris, this question is for you. Would you mind telling us about some of your professional role models and mentors, how they supported you? And then for our audience as well, if someone would like to serve as a role model or mentor, what tips do you have for them to be able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this, because role models for me personally have played such a huge role in where I am today and where I hope to go. And I try to be a role model to as many others as have reached out to me. But yeah, if I'm going to highlight two in my life. I've got many others, but I think two that most resonate with what we're talking about today. One is a woman who, unfortunately, she passed away a number of years ago, but she became a lifelong friend and mentor. Her name's Valina Perry. When I was at University of Michigan, having in my first couple of years there, having no idea what I wanted to do professionally, I was pre-med, but I was like, if I decided to go to medical school, then what? If I major in chemistry, biology, I'll be left maybe with no sense of direction. So someone mentioned, oh, there's a counselor. She became a dean of student affairs over time at the University of Michigan's College of Pharmacy. And you should talk to her. A Black woman with incredible energy, right, and passion. And she said, Norris, first time meeting me, she goes, after I told her a couple of sentences of what my dilemma was, she goes, and I said, I like chemistry, I like science, I want to do something in healthcare, but it could lead me to a number of different career directions. I was giving her these factors, and she said, profession of pharmacy is perfect for you, Norris. She said there's so many different pathways you can go. If you still want to go to medical school, you could. If you want to become a business person, scientist, clinician, you name it. And I never looked back. And she was just a lifelong supporter of me, until she unfortunately passed away. So Ms. Perry is one. And number two, the second person I wanted to mention is Dave Dolman. Dave Dolman, he actually was formerly on the PQA board. I mentioned I did this 2-year health policy program, when I was at J&J and I was moving between science, curious about policy. I had all this curiosity, right, which led me to this 2-year program, where the professors came to our campus. Well, Dave Dolman, he already was an expert in quality. He was on National Quality Forum action panels and committees. He was on the PQA board, and he was in my class. He could have taught the classes, many of them, but it was a miracle that he was in that program. So when I identified that quality was a topic I wanted to go deep in, I started partnering with Dave, learning from him. He's introducing me to people. And then that new group that formed in market access, that healthcare quality role group, Dave was the head of it. I reported to Dave, and he was a professional mentor to me all the way through J&J when I came to Pharmacy Quality Alliance, and he's still a friend even in retirement. I think I was supposed to talk to him earlier this week. So, I'll talk to him in a day or so. So yeah, those are two really key people. And I would say as far as, because the question about, would you ask about how can to serve as a role model for someone else? Yes. Mm-hmm. It's really important a lot of times people think I haven't accomplished enough to be a role model. This was my sentiment for many years, even in school and even a little bit after. And challenge, make sure you stop yourself if you have that thought, because a lot of times, listen, if you're in college, you're a role model for others. Certainly if you're in pharmacy school, you're a role model for others. There's others who are striving to be where you are. So always recognize, and what I try to do is remind myself of how far I've come, how far people who the community I'm a part of it brought me. And when I reflect on that periodically, it helps me remember there's people struggling to get to where I am, and I can serve as a role model in, paying it forward. So if you keep that front and center, how far you've come from where you started and others that are trying to get to where you are, I think it helps keep in mind. And, you get in forums like PQAs where there's all kinds, you guys have great programs, right, that bring students and young professionals to the table, and you're going to interact with people that you can serve as role models for.
I love that, Norris. Thinking about where you are now and the things that you've accomplished, and we realize we all have something to share. And so, yeah, you don't have to be at a specific position in your career to serve as a role model. I think that's an important takeaway. So thank you for sharing. Michelle, Banal, anything you would like to add about role models or mentors?
I think just one thing that I would add as well is, yes, professional role models, help you get to where you want to get to, right? But I think the personal role models in your life are just as important, because they, at least for me, they've kind of set the path of where I am and helped guide me to where I am. So I think it's just as important. And I really, really loved what Nora said about don't underestimate yourself, because I think all of us in some capacity, like, oh my God, I don't know that. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. But you do. You've done it. So taking that second to think about it and validating what you know is really, really important.
So on the topic of supporting early career professionals, my next question actually fits right in here. So I'm going to direct this one to Michelle. So Michelle, recognizing that our nation's healthcare leadership hasn't necessarily reflected our nation's diversity, where should early career professionals turn for advice, support, and inspiration?
Thanks, Amanda. And I'll be the slight contrarian, and maybe it's because I tend to see the glass half full. But when I thought about this question, and it's definitely a question that is being discussed right across the entire healthcare industry and in other industries as well. In my opinion, having been in this industry for, I'm not going to name the number of years, but I've earned every gray hair. I think that it is incredibly diverse, and there is lots of representation of different types of individuals. So when we think about it, just in healthcare leadership, it has a lot of women, especially in compliance and quality. Those are almost completely female dominated spaces. It's very, very few gents. So if you're a gentleman out there and you're interested, we actually need more male voices in quality and compliance. When we think about the pharmacy space in general, there are more young women that matriculate into pharmacy schools, and we're seeing that, we're at a point where it might be that there are more female pharmacists that are graduating than men. So just another kind of place that we say, let's celebrate where we are. And then, healthcare leadership, none of us fit into a specific or singular box. We're all incredibly unique. So in fact, we're all a minority of one. There's no one out there that's exactly like you or exactly like me. But there are places that you can go. Talking about role models, and I loved what Nora shared in terms of the people that affected his life. Number one, your role model doesn't have to be someone that looks like you or thinks like you. And as a matter of fact, it could be someone totally different than you, but it's someone who's willing to pour into you and invest in you and maybe just help you to see the world from a different perspective, right? If you're in college, if you're early in your career, like Nora said, talk with your advisors. Their job is actually to help you to make important life decisions based on what you're going to do in school. In the business world, again, talk to people, be polite and be friendly. And if someone does give you a little bit of time, remember to send a thank you note, whether it's a text, an email, or if you do it by mail. But demonstrating gratitude and demonstrating politeness will actually get you seats at different tables, and people remember thank you notes. It still goes a long way. Never burn any bridges when you're leaving a position. So I'm sandwiched in, I'm called an ex-ennial. And so my grandparents were the greatest generation. My parents are boomers. I have lots of millennials and I think they're calling Zoomers now that I deal with. So I get to see everybody. And so one thing that is changing is that people have stopped doing like a 2-week notice when they're going to leave an organization, and they have stopped like maybe not like you wouldn't badmouth an organization in the past, right? So just be careful what you say on social media, and if you can, don't criticize, condemn, or complain, and really just make sure that what you're leaving a good reputation for yourself, and don't burn a bridge, because at least in this industry, it's so small. One day your client could be your boss, could be your new owner, could be your client again. So it's a small world that we're swimming in, and it's better to be nice to everybody along the way. And then, your peers, everyone that you work with every single day is an important individual. Get to know them on a relationship level. Be willing to be vulnerable, but also be willing to talk about your hopes and dreams, because you never know the individual that could actually help to get you to the next level. But by demonstrating concern for others and trying to build relationships, that's the way that that's the way the business works. Most things happen because people remember they had a great relationship with someone in another role. I'd call on Banal any day of the week. She's a fabulous pharmacist, but she's an even better person. Norris had a great relationship with him, really enjoyed the way that he worked, and I always look forward to his emails from his organization, right? So be the best you that you can be, but the most important thing, and Banal alluded to this, is that you have to be willing to say what you want, right? Have the courage to try, and then you really do at least have a fighting chance to be seen and be recognized.
Banal, Norris, what are your thoughts on Michelle's views here?
Yeah, I would say a little bit. I mean, for sure, for me as an African-American male coming up, in Detroit, I was fortunate, but also felt challenges, right, as a function of my race. Fortunate in that I grew up in a wonderfully supportive family. I mentioned I had healthcare professionals. My mother was a nurse, I had an uncle who was an OBGYN. So I had some great role models in my family, but also, I was often in environments, especially when we moved to the suburbs, where I was one of few Blacks. And then as I moved into further spaces academically and even professionally, like as one example, like at Pfizer, right? When I worked at Pfizer, that was my first clinical research job. It was originally, I was working at the headquarters in New York City. It was my first job in a pharmaceutical company. And I was like, wow, this is incredibly diverse. And then I would go up to periodically Groton, Connecticut, and it was not diverse. So what I found over the course of my career is that, like Michelle was alluding to, a number of places where there's incredible diversity of all types, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation and the like. But there are lots of spaces that still aren't that diverse. And a lot of the people are very challenged by that because maybe they grew up around people that look just like them all the time, and they're not used to being in those environments. I was well served coming through is like in graduate school with programs that were supportive fellowships for African-American PhD students, or I got this UNCF Merck fellowship program, when I was a postdoc, and it was incredible. It brought us together, and it started increasing my confidence, right? They told me they were supporters. They gave us mentors who didn't always look like us, the Merck assigned mentor. So I have always felt like, we need the right, in order to have equity, people are born in all different kinds of circumstances. And even though, yeah, I agree with Michelle, we are all super unique. That is our greatest diversity. But we also have common subpopulations that we are parts of, for which we can see certain types of disparities or challenges that might be those communities might face. And how do we try to level the playing field while making sure people are qualified, not quotas and things like that. So yeah, I feel like, this program right here, PQA, you guys are doing wonderful work that I feel is super supportive to moving us in those directions that I'm envisioning, that we move towards. So thank you guys. Thanks, PQA.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Norris. I appreciate that. I'm hearing themes about uniqueness of individuals and what everyone brings to the table. I heard a theme, I think, Michelle, and what you said around self-advocacy and how important that can be. So I appreciate that. Banal, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
I think my one comment here is that, the question you posed is a loaded question, right? It really is a loaded question, but I think both Michelle and Norris kind of gave two different perspectives of it. And they're both relevant. They're both out there. Michelle's absolutely right that there is diversity in our workforce. When I think about pharmacy, there is diversity. And all through my career, I guess I've been blessed. I've always been in diverse settings. So it's never really, been a pain point for me. But again, to Norris's point, there are marginalized communities out there and individuals that, we do have to support and help them get to where they want to get to. But what I'll also add is once you have that support, you as an individual have to take ownership and run with it. Because nothing's ever going to be given to you on a plate, right? You got to work for it too.
Thank you for tying that together, Bernal. I appreciate that. I want to remind the audience to send your questions to us. We will have time here for some audience questions. So anything you'd like to pose to our panelists, just send it to us in the Q&A box. We would appreciate it. And then,
Amanda,
go ahead.
I wanted
Norris.
to add one little thread back to the mentor piece, tied
Sure,
to
go
this
for it.
stuff. And that is, you know, when you received whatever those might supports and types of opportunities, maybe you're from a marginalized community, and you know, put that work in that Bernal was alluding to get to these various stages along, you know, your career path. Really make sure you look back, right? For people, especially not exclusively who look like you. I have, you know, all kinds of mentees, and it's like a rainbow, right? Of every, but definitely there's probably a disproportionate number of African Americans, and you know, I take great pride in that. So, you know, you get really busy, your life gets demanding with your professional demands, you know, and also family and other type of commitments. But make sure as a part of that time commitment, you're thinking, how do I give back to help support, you know, that pipeline along the way?
Very good. Thank you, Norris, for that. Next question I'm going to ask of Bernal, and then, of course, Michelle and Norris, feel free to chime in as always. So earlier you alluded to the fact, or you described for us, Bernal, your journey at PerformRx, and really your journey even before PerformRx, you know, starting in a role that was a little more well-defined and really evolving over time. So curious if you can tell us a little bit about what you felt like led to your success in that evolution. So what drives you to be successful, and how you've been able to apply that?
I think a lot of it is to do with individuals that I worked with and the relationship that I developed, and also exposing yourself to situations that you're not comfortable with, you know, taking on things that, you know, you may not know how to do, but you're going to want to do. Or you want to do. So really being vulnerable and taking it all in, taking as many opportunities as you can, because as you know, opportunities are hard to come by. So when they land in your lap, take it, run with it, you know, make the most of it. And I think that's kind of what's kind of helped me along my journey. And of course, timing. Sometimes, you know, I had nothing to do with it, and it's just where you are in life at that time. And I think that plays a key role too. So I think the other thing that I think, you know, helps me in this journey that I'm in is that, you know, I am doing something that I've always wanted to do. Yes, it's in a different capacity than when I was in pharmacy school, but I've always wanted to help my patients that I serve, right? I've always wanted to help them in their healthcare journey with medications, with education, with empowerment, you name it. So knowing that even today, I play a small role in it, just drives me to do even more. So I think that kind of is a reason why I am where I am.
So this idea around maybe, you know, being in the right place at the right time, while also making the most of those opportunities when they come to you. Michelle or Norris, agree with those sentiments? Have anything that you want to add there?
Yeah.
So I will actually agree, but also add, but using Bernal as the case, right? So when Bernal came, I was compliance officer there. And in addition to being at the right place at the right time, right, she did incredibly good work. And she was very nice to work with. And she was nice to all the people that were there in the organization. And when she got opportunities, what she means by run with is that she did an exceptional job with those opportunities. And, you know, sometimes it can feel like, especially if you are extremely stressed and you've got a lot of family things and the work is piling up, you might get to that point on that, like below the line of accountability where you're just like, I can't handle anymore. And so opportunities are coming your way, but you might not be able to see them, and you might give like a rare kind of response that's like that's not my job, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes those are actually opportunities knocking. And yeah, it might not be your job, but if someone sees that you have a capability and it might be something that's going to be beneficial for you, or that the company could benefit because you bring something special, how you react can be just as powerful as what you do once you get in that position. So I would say that, yes, there's definitely a certain amount of timing, but being agreeable, and or if you can't handle something, at least being agreeable when disagreeing and saying it's not the right time. But sometimes even in the little things, if people find that if they ask you to do things that you're not able to do it, you don't do it in time, or it's like there's a lot of drama that comes along with what's being done, then that can tend to erode opportunities. Where if you're diligent, if everybody wakes up to do a good job, I think that, but if you wake up to just like hit it out of the park every day, and you are willing to be kind to others and humble, but also, hey, every day I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and producing, then your ramp will be so much smoother, because people are just going to start throwing opportunities your way.
So
Yeah,
really
until
playing your own, creating your own luck. Go ahead, Norris.
Yeah, I want to layer on the theme of excellence, right? That Banal alluded to, and Michelle, I 100% agree. For me, I think about what are some of those core values. There's obviously the values at the center of integrity and accountability. These are foundational, but then things like, the excellence that you bring, everything you do, and caring, right, about the environment you're in, and it makes it almost feel like it's not work, right? Because you care so much about it, but you're committing excellence to it. So I just want to reinforce that. I think additionally, and I think we're seeing this second quality reflected in all of us, is passion. Bring great passion to what you do. And the third one I wanted to allude to is relationship building. We've all been alluding to that in the context, but I want to call it out explicitly. I think, Michelle, you said, well, you said networking is the official term, but, mingling, right? But like Dave Doman, I mentioned him, and when you also mentioned not burning bridges down. And also, you just never know who you may reconnect with later on. You may have met them. And I remember Dave Doman, who I mentioned was one of my mentors. I had met him years before at J&J, at a meeting. I remember having a really good conversation with him. Didn't see him all these years until later on we became super close, right? And I told you our story. But just you're forming relationships, you're giving good impressions because you're being your authentic self, bringing those values to everything. And I think through that, you cultivate relationships, and you just never know what might come out of those. And even if nothing does come out of them, it matters, every interaction you have with every person.
So my next question actually coincides with one we just got here from the audience. So this audience member is asking, so what do PQA members actually do? And my question is going to be, in the context of PQA, thinking about health equity, thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what can PQA do? What suggestions do you have for us? What suggestions do you have for us working with our member organizations? And putting it succinctly in the question, what can we actually do? What are your thoughts on that? I'll just toss that out to anybody who would like to answer.
I can take a quick stab at that. I think PQ, like the first or second slide that you put up with the work that PQ is doing on diversity and DEI and health equity is crucial, right? It's building the foundation to get to where we need to get to. Michelle might disagree because we're already pretty diverse, but building that to the next level. And I think when you do that at an organizational level, it's going to filter down to the member organizations, right? Because we all have to work towards that. And when the member organizations do that, for example, and when I think about my organization, then if my team is doing that, the voices at my table that are developing programs, developing ideas, thinking quality through, there is a diverse set of voices at that table. So again, PQA is doing all this fantastic work around it. It's going to filter down, and I think it's just going to have an impact. So someone has to take the lead and start it. So I applaud PQA for taking this huge step on it.
Agreed, Manal. And Emma, I love your question. So what do PQA members do? They can do a lot of different things, right? So PQA has membership at an organizational level, and they'll describe themselves as a consensus building organization. And you'll see people from the FDA, you'll see military individuals, you'll see people from the biggest health plans in the country, you'll see folks from the biggest PBMs in the country, you'll see academia there. There's actually all sorts of different disciplines that are there at PQA, and PQA develops measures that evaluate the quality of medication use, right? Do we have the right drug for the right person in the right way for the right duration, et cetera, et cetera. And they tackle every kind of major issue that's gone on in healthcare. Whether we're talking about the opioid crisis, whether we're talking about medication adherence and making sure people are some of those indicia of healthcare differences that could be disparities, right? Those are things that PQA helps to measure. And so depending on your discipline, we're volunteers in as much as the organizations that we're with are members of PQA, but then PQA creates opportunities to sit on different panels that are part of different steps of that journey to measure development. There is a group that is just focused on research. If you want to nerd out and actually do all of the fun things like that, you could be part of the research team, or your organization could actually take on measures that are in development and test those measures, right? You could sit on, I sat on the patient and caregivers advisory panel. That purpose was totally different than the work that I'm doing today on the health equity technical expert panel. So I say all that to say that depending on your discipline, depending on what you're interested in, you have an opportunity as a member of a PQA organization to do any number of things at PQA, and they're pretty good about advertising that. And then Amanda, to your question, I would say as a member of the Health Equity Technical Expert Panel, and also having watched PQA put so much effort into the development of the social determinants of health, I think as it relates to developing measures that are going to help millions of people and hopefully actually ensure that everyone has a fair shake at health, I think that PQA is definitely doing the right thing in addition to what it does for people who attend as members and contributors.
Thank you, Michelle, for that overview. That was very helpful. And I think that actually ties together a lot of what we've been talking about today. We have just a little bit of time remaining, so we'll go round robin here real quick. My last question for each of you is, in 30 seconds or less, what would you like to leave our audience with today? And let's go Norris, Banal, then Michelle. All
right. So I feel like there's I mentioned about not underestimating yourself in mentoring, but I think a lot of times we don't recognize the power we have to whatever spaces we enter into. Here we're talking about that quality environment. So I just want to encourage everyone, whether you're an early career professional, you're a student, or you've been working for a while, bring your authentic self, your full authentic self, to whatever environment you're doing with all the passion that you've got, and recognize, how you can uniquely influence, the power that you have with your voice. And the diversity, is reflected in, the unique qualities you bring, but also recognize those communities you come from. And I think what those diverse voices help feed a lot of the things that we just talked about around health equity with the diverse membership and advancing medication use quality.
I think what I will add to that, and Norris, that was fantastic, by the way. Thank you for summing up our entire 50 minutes here. What I will say is, no matter where you work in healthcare, no matter what discipline you come from, always remember there is a patient at the end of what you're doing, right? So it may be a massive cascade through the organization of every different things that are happening, but at the end of it, it's a real life human being that you are going to impact. So never forget that. And that's kind of what I tell anyone that I speak to that comes new to our organization or is starting down this journey. There is a patient at the end of that. That's depending on you to get their health care. And that's why we're all here, right? As the population that we serve.
So I everything that everyone's saying, I'll try to make it short. Believe in yourself, become an expert in whatever it is, be excellent yourself, and be brave. Raise your hand, and if you're interested in learning anything or you want to, as Nora said, help someone else out, just raise your hand and let them know your interest either way, and then be prepared for a lot of extra work, but also a ton of reward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, Vinal. Thank you, Norris, for joining us today, for sharing your experience. We appreciate each of you. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you so much.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Have a great
Good
night.
afternoon.
All right, we're actually going to close here with a couple of announcements. So we're going to bring the slide deck back up here real quick. There we are. And I'm going to put a couple of things in chat. So if you would like to take a look at that for more information, please feel free to do so. So we do hope to see all of you next month at the PQA Leadership Summit that is going to take place on November 2nd and 3rd in Arlington, Virginia. Registration is complimentary to the Leadership Summit for PQA member organizations, and the registration link has already been provided directly to the key contacts of each organization. If you do have any questions, though, about the Leadership Summit, please email us. That address is in chat, or you can just listen here. It's meetings@pqaalliance.org. And then directly preceding the Leadership Summit on November 1st will be PQA Convenes, Advancing Medication Therapy Management Quality Measurement. Your organization's key to contact has also received information about registering for this event, and PQA members do receive a registration discount for the event. As with the Leadership Summit, direct any questions to us via email at meetings@pqaalliance.org. And then PQA invites members to attend our fourth quarter stakeholder advisory meeting. You can save the date for Wednesday, October the 25th from 1 to 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. This is a members only staff hosted event. We will tell you about measure development and maintenance updates, as well as engagement opportunities that are coming up. Registration information has been distributed via email. We will continue to send out information about that. You can also go to the Member Resources Library on the PQA website for additional information. And our next Quality Forum webinar will be on Thursday, November the 16th. That'll be from 1 to 2 o'clock Eastern Time. The webinar will feature a Medicare 2023 star ratings update, and it will be sponsored by PQS. This also is a members only quality forum, so please watch your email for registration information. And finally, thank you once again to PerformRx for sponsoring today's webinar. PQA is grateful for your support. Thank you, PerformRx. And to all of you in the audience, thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.